We're now recording. Whenever you guys are ready.
So is this, that's the one you're gonna read tonight, right? That's the one, that's the one.
That's the one made with the.
Right, but that's the latest.
Yes.
Yes. Thanks, John.
Don't make me come over there. I'm just kidding.
Oh, thanks.
And one more. Thank you. Almost forgot you were doing my territories.
Oh, we said to begin, you don't have everything? Okay, I'd like to call tonight's meeting of PAC together and point out that Troy Daniels had requested that everyone be informed that this meeting would be taped. And I'm so pointing that out to everyone that the meeting is being taped. So we're being taped. The agenda items before you is the Secretary's report of April 6th, August 20th, and October 15th. Apparently, there was some confusion and clarification and votes that needed to be taken to certify these minutes. Realize they go back to April 6th, June 17th, July 23rd, and August 20th. August 20th was our last meeting. So, April 6th, the minutes for that meeting are in front of you. And at that point in time, we met on that Saturday to ask questions of John Dexter as to the age, condition, and life expectancy of the equipment in the town hall. There was no discussion of the matters and no votes were taken. Is there a motion to accept those April 6th minutes?
I move that we accept the April 6th.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Well, since I don't have a copy and since I was not in attendance, I'm going to do 6. Well, 6. I see August 20th and October 15th. I'll abstain since I was not in attendance at the meeting.
Check again.
It should have been something like
There
this,
should be another one in there.
right here.
This is the minutes? That's the entire minutes of April 6th?
No. Well, I can't read upside down, but there should be one.
Okay, I do have that. I'll abstain since I was not in attendance at the meeting.
Any further discussion on the April 6th minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The next slate of minutes were June 17th, and simply the meeting was canceled and was reported for June 24th. And the minutes are on file in the town hall. Is there a motion to accept those?
No, but they were accepted.
Huh? They
Those
already
were accepted.
Okay,
The question had been raised on it, but they had been accepted,
all right.
and they are in town hall.
Oh, I'm sorry, you said the meeting was canceled, but there are minutes?
There were minutes for June 24th. There was no meeting on the 17th.
Okay. So we're not accepting minutes for the 17th?
No such meeting occurred.
Okay, no motion is needed for that. July
Well,
23rd.
we did need it, no, we didn't. Sorry. No motion.
Right. July 23rd. Minutes for that meeting were read and approved in our August meeting. As Fred was out of town and asked if anyone could drop a signed copy off at Town Hall the next day. There was a volunteer, and in the process of finding out what happened to the minutes in our September meeting, if need be, we can vote again.
We don't need to vote again. The question had been raised about that meeting, and I couldn't respond to it because I wasn't there. But I did check, and those minutes should be at town hall. So they were read, approved, and handed in.
I dropped them off the night you gave them to me.
Right,
So
so,
at 10 p.m.
yeah, so.
So there's no further motion to accept those since they had already been done.
Right.
August 20th. As everyone knows, the minutes cannot be turned in until they have been read, approved, and initialed. This would normally occur at our next meeting. As a result, we did not have a meeting since that August meeting, and the minutes of August 20th are before you. I'm not going to read them out loud, as I figured everyone here can read them for themselves. If there are any questions.
I have one question. I wasn't obviously not in attendance for the meeting. Do you normally get copies of the minutes prior to the meetings, or do you normally get them at the next meeting that you attend?
Usually the next meeting that we attend.
So if there are any errors, we have to go through them at that
Right,
meeting?
right, that's what we've been doing.
Okay. Since I was not in attendance at the August 20th meeting, I was abstaining, and I can't speak to what happened at that meeting, so I have no further comment.
Has everyone had a chance to read these minutes from August 20th? All separate. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I move that we accept the minutes for the August 20th meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, entertain a motion to accept those minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. Sign that also. Okay, and, oh, that's yours, all right. And the final set of minutes is the workshop meeting that took place October 15th, 2013, with the Board of Selectmen, and they are before you for consideration to be adopted.
Mr. Chairman, my recollection was on point one that Mr. Alonso, the Board of Select Chairman, pointed out that the the PAC did not have a quorum and therefore could not recommend a member to the Board of Selectmen for appointment. I don't see that in the number one, where it seems like it would be appropriate to be listed there. It might be somewhere else in the minutes. I didn't receive a copy of these minutes prior to just a few minutes ago. That would be my only issue, that it's not, I don't know that it's highly relevant, but there was mention made here of the PAC's belief that the selectmen do not have the authority to appoint me to the PAC. So that would be the one thing that I would like to see added to the minutes.
Okay, I did not take these minutes.
Okay.
Because I envisioned speaking to a number of issues, and I didn't trust myself to be writing and speaking and listening at the same time. There is actually another point in number one that I would have added. I'm not in disagreement with anything here, it's just different people have different style in terms of how much information they put in, and I would have put in that Paula Bertram had indicated that she felt that the Board of Selectmen had ignored our bylaws inadvertently, and that the best we can hope is that going forward, that they would be more careful to adhere to our bylaws than those of any other town bodies.
I know that the Board of Selectmen meetings are recorded, and so it would be fairly easy, I think, to go back to those and clarify or update the minutes. But I would move that we table these and or have them reviewed for clarification, because there's a couple of issues I think they're omitted. I don't know how the rest of the community feels about that.
I don't have any objection, other than the fact that they would not impact any action that was taken or could have been taken. They were just comments that individuals made. You know, and the reality is, you mentioned one comment that you thought should have been included. There was another one that I recalled, and I'm sure if we go through, there will be 75 other comments that maybe none of us recalled or some of us did. I don't know if it makes sense to include every comment that was made in that meeting, in which case the minutes, instead of being page and a half.
I might agree with that.
10 pages.
However, I think for the purposes of the statement that is made in one, the review of the charge of the committee, that is an important statement in rebuttal to this statement that is made in this, to me. I'm certain there are probably many things that were discussed that are not here. I mean, this is only a 2-page document, and that was a very long meeting, so there's probably, but for me, that would be something that would be important to be documented in the minutes.
So are you prepared to give us something in writing as to amending Article 1 or the first item that you're discussing with us? You're asking us to amend 1, correct?
I would
And
be
that
happy
would
to
be
review
on
the record and provide you with the information as it was.
So you're really asking that we table this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sue Doherty did the minutes,
Right.
and I saw her the next day to clarify specific points on here, not the ones that were missing. But I didn't know if you knew she was on it.
Perhaps her, does she take notes, do you know, by hand?
She has hand.
Perhaps her notes would offer more clarification or give something more to add more color to the.
So you're asking to table just item number 1?
No, I assume no.
Well, I don't think
we can't vote on the minutes.
Right, I wouldn't want to vote pieces and parts of minutes, I think.
Well, my feeling is that we could amend item number 1, based on any notes that were taken. Do you have notes that were taken from that?
No, as I say, it was from recollection.
Remember?
Yeah. I don't know if,
And,
do you have any notes?
No, I didn't. I deliberately didn't and asked Sue if she would,
Okay.
if I could steal her notes.
However, I think the fact that both of us have recollections of statements made that are not in the notes.
I'd be happy to go through Sue's notes and add things that appear to be significant if there are omissions.
Thank you.
well, should we go through and adopt these and amend them later as they are written?
I don't know that you could. I think you'd have to,
Well, I mean, this is what's in print, this was taken verbatim at that meeting by someone that was asked to take the notes. My feeling is we adopt them and then amend them at a later date, based on the amendments being brought before us.
I believe the purpose of adopting the minutes is to clarify, or to state that the minutes are correct. And I think, I don't know.
Well, they are correct as presented, based on the person that took the minutes of the selectmen's meeting. Now, I've asked for written amendments to be placed before us tonight for consideration. There are none.
Right.
And what I'd like to do is propose that we adopt these minutes as they are written and amend them at a later date.
if we were to do that, we could run into the same problem with items 2, 3, whatever number of items there are.
I mean, your impartial person took the minutes, is my point.
I don't doubt the accuracy of these minutes at all.
No, that's
It's
not
going to be
really
a case of whether or not there's something else that's not there. And Sue offered to let me see your minutes if I didn't know that she had taken, but I elected to accept these. So, but I don't mind touching base with her and adding to that if that's, if that would help.
Well, my concern is there is other language on this that is part of tonight's agenda. And by tabling this, that would preclude us from following through with discussion on that item in the agenda. And so my feeling is that if these should be adopted, we could at least discuss our portion of the agenda and then come back to amend the minutes as you are asking to amend them on item 1 here at a later date. By adopting these tonight, it will allow us to discuss the items on our agenda and move forward with that. I don't believe that,
I'm confused. I don't really see where there's anything that we couldn't discuss on our agenda.
well, right now we're on minutes, but if you look under old business bylaw changes regarding Article 14, Section 1, town meeting, there is a warrant article in the selectman's office that's going to be presented at the special town meeting in January.
And not adopting these minutes would preclude us from.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
I don't see that.
I don't. By adopting the minutes, we're not endorsing any statement that any one individual might have made. So I don't know why we would need to adopt them first. I don't think we get into trouble at all. I mean, doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
I think based on the item under old business bylaw changes regarding Article 14, Section 1.
Well, I will say that I think there are going to be many other issues that are going to preclude us from discussing that issue without adopting these minutes. So I don't think the minutes are what's going to present the issue, to be honest.
Well, that may be, but they haven't been brought up yet.
Right.
And the thing is, the minutes are before us
Okay.
for discussion. You know, I don't, what you're saying is you have an amended version of the minutes. Fred has an amended version of the minutes. By not acting on these minutes tonight, my concern is that it precludes us from discussing some of these other issues on this, and we could always amend this at a later date, based on the amendments brought forth. So what would you like to do?
I would like to make a motion.
Okay,
Okay. I move that we, table the minutes for this meeting and come back to the next meeting.
all right, there's a motion on the floor to table the minutes.
Second.
There's a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that table. Any other minutes to come before us tonight? Seeing none.
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Public comments. This is the time for the public to step forward. We have liaison from the Board of Selectmen here, Dave Bissell.
No comments.
Any comments?
No comments.
Mr. Selectman, are there any other comments to come before us this evening?
I have a few public comments. I just wanted to state for the record that I had correspondence with Chairman earlier that this is not a special meeting, and this is our regular meeting. And I know that in the past, it seems that some of our meetings have been a moving target. And in the article of the town bylaw, Article 5, Section 1, regular meetings, the regular meetings are determined by the committee. Special meetings are the chair may call. My understanding is that once we have a regular meeting and that the committee agrees to that time, place, that's the meeting. So this not being a special meeting for the record. I'd just like some clarification that are we to meet the first Monday of every month? Is that what this committee has decided, or is that open for discussion? And there's also,
Excuse me.
there was also issues in the bylaw about election of officers that they're to take place at the organizational meetings. My review of the minutes have indicated that there hasn't been an organizational meeting in going on fiscal year 4. The other issue with meeting in this building at this time is that my understanding is that this building right here in this room does not have handicap access. And so that would be an issue for me to continue. I mean, I know that there are other options where there's handicap access. So those are the only public comments that I wanted to bring out that weren't on the agenda.
Thank you. Anybody else have any public comments?
I actually do. I just want to clear the air, I guess, about, the thing, I just want to speak my opinion of the things that I read about myself and other committee members in the newspaper over the summer. I just think that it's a dangerous path to go down when individuals or even the Board of Selectmen publicly attack volunteers. I I think that we volunteer to try and help the community. And I think that, I know me personally, anything I have done, any mistakes I have made, certainly were not intentional. And I think that the town needs to look at itself, because as far as the bylaws, I have specifically asked questions to the town regarding the bylaws and received no response. So I do not feel that it's right to be publicly criticized for then incorrectly following the bylaws. If I did the right thing. When we tried to make bylaw changes almost 3 years ago, I reached out to the town because I needed help. I realized that we did not have the ability to figure out, to interpret the bylaws correctly or change them correctly. If I received no response, that sent the message to me and the committee that we were on our own to do it. So then how can you publicly accuse us for doing it incorrectly when we specifically asked for help? And I think this committee has been largely ignored by the town at large. We've asked for volunteers over the years. We've asked for help. And I was really excited, the interest that was shown by the current board of selectmen at the last meeting, and it shows that there's hopefully going to be some improvement in the communication between ourselves and the board of selectmen, but I know the past is in the past, but at the same time, we've done the best I think we've done the best we can to follow the rules, to increase the programming, to get a studio going. And I do want to point out too, the things I read about the chairman in the newspaper. I mean, I think that it's fair to say that I've probably disagreed with the chair on more issues than anyone in the room. I think that's a pretty fair statement. But at the same time, I think it's wrong to attack the chair and publicly instead of doing it the right way, which would be, if you don't like what goes on, you need to join the committee and vote somebody off. You don't make public statements without ever attending a meeting or knowing. I mean, I just have to point out, we've got a studio now. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the chair. When wires needed to be traced through that old building, it was not I who traced wires. It was him. He spent hours tracing wires. So I think there's contributions that are made by volunteers that you don't read about in the newspaper. You know, maybe that's a good public access show. So it really upset me. Personally, on a personal level, I have a business to run. I cannot have people reading my name in the newspaper as if I'm some kind of criminal. I don't think this board has ever tried to work outside the law. And my family has asked me not to continue on the committee, but I feel like there's some unfinished business and I need to at least stay until things are cleared up and any mistakes that I've made have been corrected. And that's about it.
Thank you, Tom. Any additional public comments? Seeing none. I'd like to thank the participants for their comments. Old business. Bylaw changes regarding Article 4, Section 1, membership, town meeting, item. shows that our joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on October 15th, comment made by Selectwoman Paula Bertram concerning various committees in town that were unable to hold meetings based on not having quorum. Quorum set, whatever the documents were set to develop the committees. And she felt that one of the ways of dealing with this based on the shortage of volunteers for town government, was to work with the selectmen to file an agenda, warrant article, special town meeting, so that committees could be able to meet with a smaller amount of members that would be required. And as a result, it's my understanding that there is a warrant article that will be placed. The date for the submission of the warrant article was 11/25. We had met
Who
since
submitted that
August.
warrant article?
Excuse me,
Who submitted that warrant article?
can I finish my statement?
Yes.
Thank you. The deadline for articles to be submitted was November 25th. Since we have not met since that October meeting, it was felt that this article should be moved forward, and as chairman of this committee, I use my executive powers to request that this be placed.
Okay. That would be a violation of the open meeting law and the bylaw. Article 7 amendments speaks to
To see if the selectmen would entertain placing it before the town meeting.
I'm saying that that is both a violation of the open meeting law and the bylaw.
Well,
If it appears on the warrant article, if the Board of Selectmen would like to do that. I don't disagree with any of the statements that you made, nor do I disagree with the assessment that Ms. Bertram made, or the characterizations that you put on it. However, there is a process by which it follows, and those processes are that we have to follow the open meeting law as well as the bylaw. And for this article to appear, it would be a violation of both of those laws.
I had asked if there was a problem with this, and I would bring this information back to the committee to meet tonight to vote it up or down.
We actually can't do it by following the open meeting law or the article and bylaw. We couldn't vote on this tonight.
And we can't vote on it
Because Article 7 amendments, the PAC may consider amendments or alterations to these bylaws.
14 days.
Yes, 14 days prior to the assembly. The notice shall include a summary of the proposed amendment, the full text of the proposed amendment or alteration, and a statement of the purpose of the proposed change. The proposed amendment must be approved by a majority vote of the PAC. It will then be sent to the Lunenburg Board of Selectmen for insertion into the warrant and be submitted to the next town meeting for approval. This protocol applies only to the PAC's ability to initiate changes to these bylaws.
Good point. Good point.
Now, if I may ask, if the selectmen want it on this, at this town meeting, are they allowed to propose a change? No? For our committee?
What item was that on the
Article
articles?
7 of the, that's under amendments for the bylaw, the town.
This is the exact thing I thought with Martha Cheeseman about when we voted on the last changes.
Well, in addition to that, you have open meeting law violations. We can't make law or pass bylaws or make law behind the scenes or make executive decisions or a unilateral decision to change a law. That's why we have an open meeting law, because there needs to be public discussion about making law. We're making law. And so for us to have one person go and say that you can do that, go ahead.
I don't think that's what happened, correct me if I'm wrong, that just a placeholder was put in place. You know, so that if we voted to amend our bylaws,
But
then it could be inserted.
You don't have what's necessary in your agenda to do that, and we have never discussed the wording that has to be placed on the agenda. It has to be word for word what we intend to pass as law.
The last time what I did was, I drafted the changes, Fred and I drafted the changes, and we attached it to the agenda 14 days prior to the meeting where we were voting on it.
And there also has to be a discussion of this committee to adopt the wording and the language, and there needs to be discussion about how they're going to be changed, how they're going to be changed. You know, we can have this discussion, I don't know, but there's no way that we can vote on this tonight. There's no way that we can approve the bylaw change.
Because of the 10 days.
There were
14 days, and there's other requirements that have to be met in addition to the open meeting law and the bylaw.
There was discussion of it at the, what's the date? The October 15th joint meeting, you know, in which it
I
was
believe
discussed
that-
changing it from 7 to 5. Certainly not, it was not discussed with exact language, but that was the discussion, it was 7 to 5.
So are you proposing, or your position is that satisfy the requirement of the open meeting law and the bylaw to change it?
Well, it was my understanding, the selectmen were going to push this, work on it and submit it.
We have a member of the Board of Selectmen as a liaison to us tonight. Maybe you could speak to this.
Mr. Chairman,
Prepared to do that.
my take on the meeting was that as we dealt with other committees that were having quorum issues, that we expected that the committee would explore the opportunities, not that the selectmen would do the
Okay.
proposal.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Bob. So I guess I didn't know that, I thought they were doing, so we're exploring the possibilities. And what you're saying, Troy, is to further explore the possibilities, you have to follow some other procedures. Correct?
Correct. I have no objection to what's being proposed, and I have no objection to, like I said, what Ms. Burcham suggested, and I believe Mr. Eaglesaw also suggested at that joint meeting. I just believe that has to be done in the right way, and I believe also that this committee, in its entirety, needs to discuss the full impact of all the bylaws. I mean, this is also an opportunity to look at all the bylaws, and if we so choose, we can do that.
Well, you know, the problem is here that, well, we don't have to go into that, obviously, you know, so you specifically are pointing out Article 7 under amendments to our bylaws, PAC bylaws. Is that correct?
In addition to open meeting law, yes,
And
for the purposes of this change that you're suggesting.
And as far as the open meeting law is concerned, how is it in violation of the open meeting law?
Well, you indicated earlier that you had made an executive decision that you had submitted a warrant article on 11/25 to be presented to the
I have
town.
requested one.
Okay. That would be a violation of the open meeting law. This committee has to have it on its agenda. We have to have discussion about it. It has to be approved by the committee. You can't make law by a unilateral executive decision.
Okay, so it's because it's before you tonight. It wasn't hidden, it's out in the open for discussion as we're discussing it.
The,
How is that?
as it's stated, is a-
Other than the 14 days?
well, as it's stated on this, it would be insufficient to satisfy the requirements of the Article 7. I would encourage you to read it in its entirety. It has to have the full text of the proposed amendment or alteration. It has to be given 14 days in advance. In order to get to the full text of the proposed amendment or alteration, this committee would have to discuss it and vote on it in order to accept it and make it what we want to present to the Board of Selectmen for approval and for the town, for the article.
We actually did it by subcommittee last time. But,
That doesn't satisfy the requirements, so, I mean,
No, well, it was then brought back to the committee.
right.
I remember you guys voted on the
Yeah.
language change.
Well, I would move that we table this then. However, I would just point out, the next opportunity to change it at town meeting will be in May. The three of us have had to commit really to being at all the meetings. The fact we now have a fourth member doesn't change that. If we can't change the total membership, then
I understand all
that
four
means
of us.
again
Yes.
that we have to all be there. The other provision that you, I think, referred to in your public comments had to do with the meeting dates.
Yeah.
And Article 5 says regular meetings will be held as determined by the fact with the time and place to be posted at town hall. I think that's especially in light of the fact that we have to have 100% attendance, it would be a serious mistake to consider changing that.
That's why we made that change in the language, was because it was difficult. Lance and Fred both go out of town quite often, so it was hard for us to determine in a month in advance. Usually we set our meetings, you know,
The
at
previous meeting.
exactly. But some months, we know that these guys are both traveling, or one of them's traveling, so we've had to alter, you know, it can't always be the first Monday,
Right.
or,
I do know that my notification of the last meeting was, I think, 48 hours, so I had no way of knowing, and I had to.
we actually normally would have we should have thought to set it at the October 15th meeting, but I think we were just all, typically that's how it happens. Like, Joe, you missed a meeting one night, and
I wasn't told
You
about
were-
it.
exactly, because normally you're sitting here, so of course you know when you set the next meeting,
Well,
and
her attendance is not required in order for.
I know, but I'm just pointing out that that's
Yeah.
how the oversight happened.
Yeah, and that's probably what's wrong.
So, is it that we don't have a regular meeting? It's a moving, a revolving?
As far as the date goes,
Right.
that's typically how we've had to do it, just based on,
Is there any,
Yeah.
can we have it in the first week of the month? Can we have it in the second week
It
of the month?
varies based on everyone's schedule, and everyone's.
I'll give you an example. I'll be leaving in a few days. I'll be back January 16th or 17th. So I'm not here the first 2 weeks. Now, if in fact if 3 was the quorum, that's okay. If I miss, if you're out of town one time, you miss, that wouldn't be a problem. But the reality is right now, none of us can ever miss.
Yeah. And I'll,
So it has to be flexible.
I'll be leaving January 3rd, probably for close to a month.
So that
So
means
that's all the
from
more reason, you know,
from December 10th till February, we can't meet, essentially. So I mean, it's a serious problem,
Yeah, I understand.
and there's just no way around it, and if we were, forced to adhere to the first Monday or whatever, it would just compound the problem.
Well, I don't think, I certainly understand the position that you're all in, and I have a similar situation myself, so that's not really the issue. For me, the issue is that it seemed to me I'm somewhat of a moving target. I never knew when it was coming up. If I can at least be given some notice, or at least be able to give you some advance notice that I can't make it, and we, like, I think for this meeting, we gave like 3 or 4 different dates and said, this is the date that works best for all of us. At least that would be appreciated, because to say to me, in 48 hours, this is the date we're gonna meet, I have,
Well,
that's not enough
now we can just set it
Set
up
the meeting
and,
before, we'll set
Yes.
the date before we leave tonight.
Okay.
on a
Yeah.
basis.
time. Okay, that's not a
that
problem,
way,
But
that's
go-
how we usually do it, but things have gotten,
that's understandable, yeah.
But going back to the bylaw changes, based on what you're suggesting here, and according to Article 7 of the amendments in the PAC bylaws, based on the fact that we didn't have 14 days prior notice, and that there was a question with an open meeting law and discussion of this committee, I would entertain a motion to table this item for this evening and to bring it up for our next meeting.
I would so move.
second.
Any further discussion?
If you would like, I would volunteer to forward some language that may give some assistance in formulating that language, if you'd like.
That would be very helpful.
Do you see a need to change any language other than the number?
I really haven't looked at it. Probably not. Are there any, since we are likely not going to make it before May anyway, are there any other issues in the bylaws that have come?
Originally, these bylaws were adopted when I don't think I was on the committee. And as a result, from being adopted at a town meeting, I think it was in 2007 or what have you, they were resubmitted back to the town of Lunenburg, April 2nd, 2008, by the Attorney General's office with suggestions on how to bring them back into line. I'm not sure whether you have a copy of that or not. And we worked on these a second time to bring them back into where they needed to be in line with the town bylaws based on the Attorney General's suggestions. And changed, at that time, one of the changes, and it's in that copy that you're
We
reading.
voted on them March 10th, 2011, and then they were subsequently passed to the next town meeting.
So what you're saying is no, there is no other issue. It's mostly.
No, I mean,
Oh, I'm not saying that.
Well, I just
Yeah.
want to point out that, like I said, when we were working on these, I asked for help. So, do I think that I did it correctly when I grabbed those? I don't know. Do I think they are totally in compliance with state law now? I don't know, because nobody helped us, so
but they
to
were,
say that they won't come back in 2 years, who knows?
I don't think there's anything that would prevent that from coming back in 2 years.
I mean,
Well, I'm just saying,
these were approved
it
at
was
the
done
town,
by someone
There
who
was
was not
approval from the
skilled.
Attorney
town
General.
council and the Attorney General.
So,
Well, same thing with the first bylaws when they came back.
Yeah,
No, I
that's why I
You
say
know-
anything is possible, but
I guess the offer was, do you
No,
want me to look at anything else, or are we just strictly concerned with the membership, the number of members, section 1?
in terms of dealing with an issue that actually has some significance, it's the membership. That's the issue.
Okay.
Is it possible that there are other areas where it could be improved or where there might be a legal issue? Sure. And that certainly could be brought up at a subsequent meeting, But in the short run,
Well, I guess
I think it's
the
important.
process of getting it to town warrant, and the process of getting town vote, and the process of getting Attorney General review is not generally something that you want to do multiple times if you can help, in my opinion, but if that's certainly, I'm certainly willing to just look at membership, but I think we had a motion and we had seconded, and I think,
Personally, I'm in favor of making the change on membership first. There's nothing that would preclude at the next meeting, bringing up other issues so that we could have them all wrapped up before the town meeting. We would have,
Until
the spring. Yeah.
so, Mr. Chairman, is that something you want me to do, or?
Well, take a look at it and submit your suggestion to us for the next meeting, so we can review it and then determine if that's the direction we want to go.
Okay, I think I'll submit it to you, through you, for open meeting law issues, and then, it can be distributed for a meeting.
I mean, we're not gonna meet probably till the end of February, the way things are going, so there's plenty of time to look at it.
Okay. You got lots of time. I haven't had a deadline like that one.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the floor to table this issue on a bylaw change regarding Article 4, Section 1 of membership. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, entertain a motion to table.
I so move, or,
We already.
I
All in
thought we
favor?
did.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Getting caught up in my own thoughts here. All right, revote,
I distracted with all that. I distracted with all that conversation. Sorry.
revote votes taken at August 2013 meeting. Okay, apparently there was, Troy had suggested to us many moons ago that, based on our committee makeup, et cetera, that there were items that were voted on. And the question was, well, should we have voted on them based on the makeup of the membership? Fred Crellin put together the 5 items that were passed in July and August for additional review tonight to solidify these votes once again now that we have a full committee makeup. The first motion that was before us, or is again before us this evening, is a motion was made and passed unanimously to purchase 2 compatible desktop PCs for an amount not to exceed $1,200.
I'm really sorry to bring this up again. In order to have something that you can make a motion on and pass, it should be specified in the agenda to say revote votes taken at August 2013 meeting, and you're talking about substantial amounts of money are problematic for the open meeting law. I don't know what to tell you. I'm uncomfortable with revote votes taken in August 2013 meeting, referring, without lacking any further specificity, referring to multiple thousands of dollars for specific items. I don't have any issues with what you're proposing or what you're talking about here. My issue is with the open meeting law satisfying the requirements on the agenda.
Well, how should this be presented?
Well, the Attorney General says that it should be very specific. If you know that something's going to be discussed at the meeting, and you know what the topic is going to be, for instance, when you say that there's going to be a discussion or a vote or motion taken on purchasing 2 compatible desktop PC or $1,200 or whatever the line items. I'm not saying it has to be that specific, but it certainly is something that would be anticipated for this meeting that would be discussed. And you mentioned earlier there were 5 items. I didn't know what those 5 items were, so it certainly lacked enough specificity for me to know, to come into the meeting and know what I'm going to be expected to vote on. And so now, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I'll be honest, I was under the assumption, okay, that we probably would not be voting on these since A, you weren't there when they were voted on initially, and B, based on these votes, okay, decisions were made. Money was spent. I don't know how you get the genie back in the bottle if we suddenly vote to not purchase two compatible desktop PCs.
What we can do is ratify, and when ratification would include my vote and as a member of this committee. I'm not saying that I wouldn't ratify that. I'm just saying that I do not think that we've met the requirements under the open meeting law to get it moved in motion. I mean, maybe there's somebody else in the room who can give me more clarification. on
I
what
have
I'm
a
saying.
question, actually, if I may.
Sure.
So, we have to be specific in the agenda as far as the exact amount and what's gonna be purchased in the agenda? That should have been in the agenda?
If, what the Attorney General says is if we knew with certainty that that's what we were going to do, and that's what we were going to talk about, and that's what we were going to make a motion to do, then it should specify in the agenda. We could put it in a lump sum that we're talking about equipment, and we're talking about this total amount. Appears that it's going to be about, what, 42 plus 3, I don't know, $7,500 or so? I don't know. I don't know what all five they are.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Selectman.
This is a change to the open meeting law from what we all knew it to be in the past. It used to be you could have general topics on, as Troy has stated. Now, if you go back to July or August, the July or August agenda should say items to be purchased, capital items such and such. You needed to have it then, let alone again now. So if you have any agenda items in any future meetings where you're gonna take a vote, and you know you're gonna take a vote, you need to have that on the agenda so that not your members, but the public can choose to decide whether to come to the meeting or not. That's the purpose. You folks know what you're doing. You're gonna end up being the experts in this committee. The open meeting law is for the public that doesn't know what you're doing, and gee, should I go there or not? I happen to look at, I'm also a liaison to the Board of Health. I look at their agendas, and if there's septic system reviews, and it says this, this, and this, they need to really tighten that up a little bit, to have a little bit more about what that means, but at least I know that the Board of Health has an opinion on that type of thing. So when you do your agenda, your votes, your expected votes need to be itemized out so that the people will know what it's gonna be.
So the issue on this is, there was a discussion during the meeting on a budget review, and these items were amounts that were determined during our discussion that needed to be appropriated at that time in order for us to move forward for the purchase of equipment. And as a result of purchasing this equipment, which we had defined as needed, I don't remember if it was the equipment the town hall or what have you, or the studio, as to needed, what you're saying is that during that conversation at that meeting, once we determined this equipment as being needed, we could not take a vote on it that particular night. We would then have to post it for the next meeting and take a vote on it then, based on Joe's citizen coming in that may see it posted on the agenda and inquiring about the cost of the equipment.
The other option you have, if you know you're going to be talking about the budget and you think you may vote on some capital items, you could add another agenda item going into it, discuss and vote on capital budget as proposed in the items that you know, if you know about ahead of time. It's almost like saying to people, do the work ahead of time, give us the list of what you think we should be voting on. It says vote, you could have an agenda item, buy PCs, expected to buy 3. You could then do a motion to buy 2. But the public knows that you're going to be discussing buying PCs or capital equipment. The description needs to be big enough that they understand it in advance.
Yeah, my point is, I don't think we realized it until we got into the meeting that night. And that's why it was brought up.
May I
Joe?
say something? because we have spans of time in between, and John and I work every day and know what needs to get done right away, or we measure these things out. I believe I brought that up at the meeting. However, I don't have a problem sending requests to get on the agenda so that you can be more specific. I've done that before, and sometimes it makes an agenda and sometimes it doesn't, but I could always send it to you beforehand so that you can state on the agenda.
That would be helpful.
Well, I've done it before, but I didn't.
Oftentimes what happens is, we don't know about a need that may come up during a month, and then it's presented to us, and to continue our operations, we need to make a decision. We'll discuss it, and then make a decision. So,
I don't-
anything would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I've sent things, so but I can make sure that we package it up and.
I don't know if it would be helpful,
Just if there's a, excuse me, if there's an emergency situation where, something breaks down, we have to buy it right away. Is there like a proviso?
And that has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something that you could purchase, but the next meeting announce that an emergency situation arose and had to be purchased, or? Since it's ahead of a meeting, can you?
in my opinion, it would be the policy adopted by the PAC.
Okay.
And what we've done in the past is if there's been an emergency,
But it wasn't
such as
policy.
that piece of equipment that went out, a month ago
But it
because of
wasn't
the
policy.
storm.
It wasn't policy. It was just, we did it. But it was not, it wasn't a policy.
Right, but we can make.
That's what I'm saying, it's
We
not that
can
we
make
can
a
make it a
policy
policy,
and
so-
vote on that policy.
There's a cushion for emergencies, but there's no policy for it.
Or if there's been a case where you spent money out of your pocket.
Because there's no policy and it has to be paid, yeah,
Right.
but it's sometimes a capital expense is
So
too
we
much
should,
even for me.
I think she's gone ahead and prepared the vouchers knowing that it should be paid. I mean, that's common sense.
Yeah, they're usually small items, so $100 or less, or.
But everything-
I read somewhere in
Sometimes-
I thought I read somewhere in the minutes that there was a policy adopted where anything that was under $500.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
that sounds vaguely familiar.
Well, there is. And, but going back to this, where it's before us tonight, for reconsideration and a revote, going back to Selectman Ebersol's comment that it was back in July and August, was it back to the point before this new law came in, that because there's three of us here that took part in this and voted on this, they can reconfirm this tonight? I think some of this money has been, appropriated and spent. I'm not sure on that, but
You could do that at the risk of violating open meeting law. I don't know where people are and if anyone's available for a meeting this week even. As long as we post another meeting 48 hours in advance.
he's not available.
Okay.
I'm here till the 10th.
My days are off, I don't even know what days it is.
So, I mean, this is what we get into, and that's why we make some of the decisions we make based on the time that we've got to make them and not realizing they're a violation.
I mean,
So,
I
what
guess the
you're saying-
suggestion would be, if you have to make a decision to be overly specific or under specific on an agenda, I would suggest to be overly specific.
To be what?
Overly specific. Give more information than you might need in order to, if you have a question or doubt about what should be on the agenda. I certainly could offer to help, but I don't really have any further comment on this, I don't think. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Well, obviously, the three items, 1, 2, and 3 are money items. The second one is to accept the FY14 budget as recommended with the above changes. The fifth would be a motion was made and passed unanimously to pay the purchase orders presented in the line items voted in the FY14 budget. By not doing this, throws everything out of whack. caught between a rock and a hard place. By doing it, we're violating the open meeting law. And by not doing it, we're not exercising our prudence in terms of getting these things paid when we thought it was paid back in July and August.
I for one am willing to meet again separately to pass this. I do think that it's a horrible waste of time, because the reality is there are not going to be 1,000 people knocking down the door to see us ratify something that we did 3 months ago
I don't disagree
for
with
small amounts of
I don't
money.
disagree.
And, you know, I am, I guess, always more concerned about the spirit of the open meeting law than I am the letter of the law. You know, that I don't want to see government ever operating behind closed doors, deliberately trying to prevent people from finding out what's going on. That clearly was not the case here. You know, we had a budget presentation, and in the midst of that, we made a few decisions. They were not primarily purchases, they were transferring money from one account to another and so on. It was not that we were voting to send the committee on a 6-week cruise. They were relatively, you know, insignificant items.
That would be a violation of a whole different order.
That's right. You know, I don't mind if, you know, if we have a common schedule times when we get together and have a 10-minute meeting to revote these, to ratify these. I just think it's,
And I don't mean to be accusatory,
I-
it's just an observation that this doesn't satisfy the law. That's all, in many ways, it's a protection for all of you too. I'm not trying to be accusatory that you're doing anything wrong or you did anything wrong.
Yeah.
I merely wanted to be correct, and I certainly don't want to participate in anything that's going to get me in trouble.
see, my inclination in this case would be to ignore it. If there's someone in Boston that's looking at this and going to get upset, they need to find other things to do with themselves. But I don't mind meeting again. You know, I mean, I could meet next Monday, you know, if that's convenient for everybody, you know, for a quick meeting. It's just, it's been a while now, and we need to clear some things up so that we can start moving forward. And if meeting between now and, you know, next week is possible, and we get together and have, especially if we agree it's a 15-minute meeting, that we have sort of parameters on what we're going to discuss. I mean, I don't think we have time for a meeting next week where we revisit the bylaws, but we do have time to ratify these votes, certainly. I don't know if there's anything else that's going to come up that, you know, could be dealt with, you know, in a meeting before, you know, before the end of December, because as we've mentioned, it looks like after that, we're not really available as a committee until the beginning of February. You know, so I'd hate to see this just hanging there. You know, if this is not a legal vote, and yet we're spending money, you know, I would like to see this ratified somehow very quickly, you know, so that we can just sort of check that one off. So I don't know if anyone feels that it would be better if we post an agenda and vote on this again. That's fine with me, as long as it's within the next week.
And would the agenda that's to be posted specifically state, as is laid out before us, these 5 items for discussion and ratification as they are written?
That would be up to you, Mr. Chairman. I believe you set the agenda, so.
Well, I want to make sure that the agenda passes without having to meet December 25th.
Yeah.
So is there any, so that my feeling on this would be to, let's find out, before we discuss this any further, what everybody's time frame is to be able to meet to adopt these items and make it official, so we're not in violation of the open meeting law, as prescribed by the Massachusetts State Attorney General. Fred has brought up the date of the 9th. Is the 9th available for everyone to meet?
Excuse me, I need to grab my calendar.
Yes. Yes. I can-
For this only agenda item?
Yes.
And unless there's anything else that pops up before we finish the agenda. I'm not saying that there will, but I'm looking at ideally a very short meeting.
I understand, Mr. Secretary.
I believe that,
Excuse me?
I believe that we can limit, whatever we put on the agenda, well, we can't go beyond what the agenda is anyway. Yes, the 9th is good for me.
All right. I would entertain a motion to table these items 1 through 5 until December 9th, 7 o'clock, to bring them up for further discussion and acceptance.
So moved.
Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, entertain a motion to accept tabling of these items.
So moved.
Aye.
Aye, okay, thank you. So we will meet for the purposes of moving these forward on December 9th at 7 o'clock.
Are we assuming it's probably going to be here?
I'm gonna try and get it here, and I know there's a handicap spot out here because,
My understanding is that there is handicap access in the building, parts of the building, but not in this space here, so.
Well, because
there are. other
it
places.
goes through the front door,
Yeah.
which we don't have a key to.
well, I don't know what to tell you. I know that it's very, well, we're digressing. I'll
Can
have
we
to,
meet in where
we can meet right outside on the porch, how's that?
it's cold?
Well, too bad, we're only gonna be.
Well, if you know what, we
Bring your
don't,
fur coat, Troy.
the planning committee doesn't look like they're meeting on Monday, and town hall has handicap accessible, you could always meet at town hall, there's no other meetings there. Just the
Planning,
conference.
planning tonight.
Planning is the 9th?
Yep.
I don't have them down for the 9th. It wasn't posted on the
Oh,
on the town website.
I will ask
Okay,
about
so-
that, but
Okay.
for all intents and
There was
purposes,
a time to post
I'll
it.
So
ask
glad we
about the
managed to
handicap
schedule.
business, but for all intents and purposes, we can just meet on the porch outside and discuss this and go through. I would hope, if, you know, it's not gonna be that long of a meeting. Okay, so that's tabled.
And the reality is, if somebody came and needed to get in here, we could get through and open that door, I assume.
I don't know, I never tried it.
I'm guessing, but
I think
I
they,
don't think the store is
I
locked.
think they have an alarm system.
And the rest of the building, oh, okay.
All right. Budget follow-up, FY14 budget. That, I guess, is on hold till we go through these items for our next meeting. Any thoughts, comments?
Well, going back to, now, a few months ago, it's been a while, but my recollection is there was a question on a couple specific numbers, whether it was dollar amounts or maybe just serial numbers of equipment. They came up in that budget vote. And that you were going to clarify a couple numbers. It may have been serial numbers rather than budget numbers, I'm not sure.
But, what numbers, I just need my memory jogged, I don't know, some numbers. Do you mean for inventory purposes, or?
No, but we were discussing the FY14 budget. And we did pass these things because they were just moving money from one item to another and so on.
Right.
But there were a couple questions where you said you thought the number was wrong. Not these numbers, but something on that FY14 budget. And I don't recall whether it was a serial number. But that's why in my notes I put that on there that you brought up again.
Regarding the budget,
Came out of that August meeting when we looked at.
I don't know what numbers other than the line, you know what it was? I had, a listing of purchase of services where, and I'm guessing this is the only thing I can think of, where the amount that was allocated or proposed was $12,000. And we added another $3,000. And on my sheet it said $1,500 instead of $15,000. It's the only thing with numbers, but that was corrected in the proposed 14 budget. It's the only thing I can remember or think of. John Henshaw brought it up, and I noticed in my notes I had a comma problem going on, comma zero problem. And so that was fixed. It's the only thing I can.
That may have been it.
I believe so.
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible for me to get a copy of that before the next
Copy of,
the budget that we discussed?
It's in my
Is this-
report because
Is
I
this the
didn't,
budget that we have on right here?
this is what we
So this is
proposed. This is FY14 budget proposal.
okay,
It was accepted and a letter,
projection.
I prepared a letter, the plans
Okay.
approved, and it went to.
So this is the entire budget that we just got moved
The line items, yeah, and
Okay.
the following budget listed is just the last time the last one I reported. October showed no spending, which was odd, and then I requested the November budget, trial balance budget for the committee and did not receive it yet, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
so is there any
Well, the other thing was the B&H credit.
B&H credit? Where are we with that?
Okay, we don't, I explained, I think, 3 meetings ago, that B&H has nothing to do with the warranty. Like most companies today, when you buy something and you get a warranty or a refund, they contract out to third parties. I know I brought this up a few meetings ago. So we were required to pay the bill to the vendor for the cameras and the warranty. They offer it through their company, but then they're done with it. We paid B&H at the end of the last fiscal year, actually. And the committee asked me, or told me you did not want a warranty, and you had told me that, and I obviously didn't get through. So I contacted the company that works with B&H. So B&H has nothing to do with this, with the warranty. And the company sent a refund back on July 8th for $31.50 for one of the cameras. They failed to send the other check for the second Sony camera, and I was told recently it is in the mail. So B&H has nothing to do with this at all. So holding back their payment has
No.
nothing to do with the
It was
warranties.
never a question of
Okay.
holding money. I remember that discussion,
Right.
but it was just brought up because they had refunded the warranty for one, and we were waiting to hear on the other one.
Right, but it wasn't through B&H, it was through Square
Right.
Trade Company, which I mentioned before.
But at
Yeah,
any
well,
rate,
Lance
the check
held
was in
out
the
the
mail.
last voucher, for B&H, which really needs to get paid. They have nothing to do with the warranty.
Well, I had, prior to the end of October, I think I had sent you an email, Joe, and I was concerned about getting that credit back, and talked to Pick Stewart. And she said, geez, I can't find the paperwork, if you need some help trying to get that back, 'cause I didn't know the status of it. Have Joe sit down and meet with me, and we can work out getting it back.
I didn't need to talk, thank you for looking into it.
Well, I needed to know because I didn't know what the status was.
I explained at the last couple of committee meetings how it's done and that it's in process. PEG has nothing to do, Peg is an accountant supervisor, and I go to her for questions when I need to, but this had nothing to do with her.
It does,
And I
because
answered your
the
question.
vouchers itself need to be signed off to pay the bills. And if I felt there was a credit due us that we did not receive, and it had been over a month or two, then I thought it was appropriate to somehow follow up. And if it wasn't B&H, to follow up with whoever it was.
She would not have that information. I had that information, and I explained at the committee meeting 2 or 3 times ago that B&H has nothing to do with it, so you're looking for the information from Peg, who did not purchase a warranty, nor does she know the status of the warranty, nor, I mean, it's all up to you.
That's why I asked you to talk to her about
But
that.
I have all the paperwork, and I told you it was in process.
At the time, I didn't think it was in process, but I'll leave it at that.
I mean, that's fine, I go to Peg for questions, but she has nothing to do with this process.
My only question was, it's not a huge amount of money, it's
3150.
3150.
Mhm.
It was just hanging. And
Yes,
so I was curious whether that had been resolved and whether we just couldn't get it back, or whether, you know, if you say the check is in the mail, that's,
it is in
as
the
far as
mail.
I know, that's the only reason that was on the agenda.
Right, and when I get it, I will deposit it back into, like I did with the first one. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on budget follow? Seeing none, programming update. Homecoming. Joe, how do we make out with homecoming?
Great, it was a wonderful parade, and I went to THMS and get all the footage for the float, and Jason Kearns did the football game. It came out great, not the final score, but the videotape came out great. So homecoming was low budget, high quality, so it went very well.
I saw part of that. There was no narration though, right? It was just video.
Oh, of the football game?
Crowd noises, but.
He was next to the announcer. I did not watch it. I saw a piece of it. So did you see the? I
I saw.
told him to park near. The
I saw a piece of it, and the video was terrific. The audio was confusing because it was mostly crowd noises.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was a great effort under the circumstances. It's not the quality we would have had we
Mhm.
been meeting and been able to, you know, rent the equipment that we normally would have and so on. But I was happy to see that we got something, you know, and I did see the parade and that, and.
Did you like the
that-
parade? Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Program calendar.
Okay, I included in my package November, what was planned to have been done in November. And, you know, a few things, actually, we did cover all of it in November. And the other side is December. There's a few things missing, it's what it is at this moment. Pretty self-explanatory. Jason Kearns has been more than generous with his time and helping us out whenever we need it. He did, however, go to videotape the flag football game, alumni flag football game. I did not see any announcements that it was canceled. I made an assumption that it might be, but I didn't see anywhere. And he came out to videotape it, so he spent a considerable amount of time coming from Dunstable, coming out, waiting around, going back to Dunstable. So I propose that we pay him for his time.
Was the game played?
It was not.
Oh, I didn't know.
See, nobody knew it, and he called me up
Well, there was
here,
something in
there's
the
no.
paper saying it was gonna be played.
Really, I didn't check out the paper, but I looked on the website, it was not played, and we need to pay him for his time. So, anyway, that.
What's the minimum amount of hours he would have? 4?
Two to 4, I mean, it's up to the committee. I would give him a minimum of 2 hours because of his time, and you know, he's a stay-at-home dad, he had to get a babysitter, he, you know, he's always supportive of me and the organization.
He's a valuable resource.
Very good.
He's particularly good at sports and stuff like that, and, you know, he's willing to fill odd times, you know, so.
Yeah, he had a collegiate football game, UConn or some huge game, because he does part-time work with the SPN, you know, on a contract basis, and he told them, no, I have something I'm working on. I was like, us? And he goes, yeah, and I said, oh man, that ain't right. Yeah,
Would it be possible, Mr. Chairman, to add that to our November 9th agenda?
Then we lost that.
Or December 9th, I'm sorry. I lost them.
Right, see, that's the exact thing I was talking about, is the fact that something like
I
that
bring it
comes
up
up, and
is-
typically we would vote just because somebody needs to get paid,
I guess I'm
not
Yeah,
realizing
I guess I'm
that,
confused
it's
too
a
about
violation
the
of-
policy of under $500. I don't know what the relationship has been, I don't, you know, you're holding up $31, and I'm thinking, well, on a day-to-day basis, who manages these, you know, when you have a budget and there's up to a certain amount, does the manager of that manage those funds, and do they pay those items up to a certain point?
If she does a purchase on it.
So, I'm not sure if this is something that needs to be voted on, if Joe has the authority to make that decision, I don't know, I'm just asking.
This has always been brought forth before the committee.
usually,
I do need- I do
usually
need-
payroll stuff.
Payroll stuff, yeah.
but they're not, it's not payroll, it's vendor
Yeah, he's
charges.
under the
And
other.
I'd be very
Even John
careful
is-
calling it payroll, because there's whole other implications.
Right.
Well,
I mean, it would be good to have that authority, because not like I want to go on a power trip, but I'd like to get bills paid. And I typically do get vouchers in, pay, time cards in, pull them together, send them for approval.
Yeah, the reason,
So to double approve it, I mean, I do need the authorization to say, yeah, Jason, put your 2 hours on there. We're talking $40.
Yeah, right.
yeah, I think the reason for that policy originally was that if you had to buy tapes, something like that,
Yeah.
that you shouldn't have to wait for a meeting to be able to go buy a couple tapes. It's not like we're going out to bid, you know. But in this case where there is sort of a judgment call, I would say it would be appropriate for the committee to vote on it. I don't know, are you saying that you don't think we could vote on that tonight?
I think we should know about it.
I don't think you could vote on it tonight, but it's not on the agenda. I don't, at the same time, if you talk about waiting until a meeting, even if you wait 1 month for a meeting, you're asking somebody to wait a very long time.
Well, that's what we're trying to
Okay,
avoid.
yeah.
But I mean, even if you have your regular meetings, that's a long time.
It is.
Well, we did establish it when I first started, that there was too much time between to get vouchers done, so we filled out a form with the accounting department where Lance, you know, signed that form, and everyone in the committee signed that form saying, I forget what it was called, you know, in between meetings, any authorization can be signed by Lance, and that,
Procurement.
it's like saying the committee supports one signature when they're not in.
This is an unusual one, in that it's not that he came in and worked 4 hours. It's that we could pay him 0, which would be insane. We could pay him 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours.
I guess the question is if Joe has a budget amount of, I don't know, $1,000, I don't even know what, and she exceeds that budget, then she doesn't get more. That's, I don't, that, to me, that's sort of how budgets work, but I don't know.
I just see this one as unusual, in that it's not clear cut. And since we are meeting in a week, I wouldn't want to see Jason have to wait a month for a small amount of money. But if we're gonna meet in a week,
The 9th.
you know, we could put that on the agenda. I have no doubt that, you know, some
I get,
good decision to make.
the other distinction is that if this couldn't be reasonably anticipated, that would be at the meeting. I guess it would be a judgment as to whether, you know, we could vote on it tonight.
Certainly couldn't have
I
been
mean, ahead of time?
anticipated, we wouldn't
Well,
have known that the
yeah.
game was
One
canceled.
of the issues is that if you can't reasonably anticipate that something's gonna happen at the meeting, that it, you know, that it wouldn't be a violation if it's not on the agenda. So that's,
Yeah, we've done that.
You know,
I think we tried to do that when we knew that there was something being needed.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, could I make a motion on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I move that we pay Jason Kearns for 4 hours' work, and I feel guilty making it only 4.
May I interrupt for a second? There was another game that was moved or canceled that he just ate the time on, and I should have noted it, I'll have to talk to him. But 4 hours is fair because it's happened once before. And I had a long discussion with him on the phone. One of the things we talked about is, our contacts in the school. Their website isn't always correct, most of the time it is. I need to have Darlene Steele or,
Well, she's not there as much as she used to be.
okay, or Pete, or somebody tell me when something's not happening. So, I'm sorry to interrupt, but 4 is really fair for Jason at this point.
All right, well, there's a motion on the floor.
is there, I have a question, is there a standard rate, or do we know the amount that would be here?
Yeah, there's a set amount.
20
each
an
one,
hour.
yes. Yeah. There's a motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, further discussion on this matter? Seeing no further discussion, entertain a motion to accept paying J.C. Kearns for 4 hours that would cover both canceled games.
Aye.
Okay. And that's something to be brought up again, are you saying? No.
It's done, done deal.
Okay. The problem is, Joe, that the cancellation of the games is handled by the AD. And that those people that are officiating for that game are emailed or texted way in advance of the start of the game
I need to get on
to
this
let them
list.
know that the game is being canceled.
Mhm.
And, I know Pete is out straight, and unless you're in his base to be texted, you're not gonna know. And I don't, I guess you could ask him, I could ask him, but I'm not sure how that would work.
I'll contact him and find out if I can get on that distribution. Because for me to miss, for me to show up and have a game moved, canceled, what have you, I'm 10 minutes away. Jason, obviously. So I'll see if I can get on his text list, because basketball's coming up and Jason likes to do
Well, if there's a
basketball.
snowstorm and the game's canceled, you get somebody in there to cover the game, and he's coming from Dunstable, and
To be honest, the money isn't the worst part of it. If it's canceled, it's probably gonna be canceled because of bad weather. To have someone risking life and limb to get here and bringing in a babysitter and so on, and then get here, very discouraging to get here and there's no game.
I mean, obviously, if there's a statewide alert to stay the hell off the road, then, no sense in doing that, but if there's a quirk or something like that, he should be told, or someone should be told.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll try to get on.
So as far as the December calendar is concerned, you're fairly confident that these are all the events that are being covered, and there may or may not be some additional ones?
It's constantly updated. I missed a planning one for the 9th. So that should be on here, planning board. Thank you, John. And, as far as today, it's constantly being updated. We have the LHS It's a Wonderful Life play going on. I've been working with Chief Sullivan about fire videos, fire drills. This weekend, there's one coming up, and Jason's gonna cover that.
School building committee, the 19th.
Oh,
What's that, John?
School building committee, the 19th.
oh yeah, I didn't add them in yet.
That's the finance committee.
And that date is which?
Okay. We only do it when, what
That's
is
a
it?
joint.
It's the finance committee public
Oh,
hearing on
finance,
the
okay.
school.
Yeah,
What date is that?
the 19th.
The The 19th,
I'll update this and send it out to you. Yeah.
and that's at Town Hall? I would assume that's at Town Hall? Yeah. And I would think that, I don't know when they're getting out of school, but this is it for the holiday stuff, The Wonderful Life and the instrumental concert, there's no pops or anything?
Not till May.
Local concert, okay. I know one of the issues we discussed, since we're meeting, was trying to get additional programming done out of that studio.
Mhm.
And I know it's been push and pull type of deal. What do we need to do to try and get some programming out of that studio?
Well, I have a musician, a guitar player who is interested in his own show, Jake Hallett. And he's the guy that works in the convenience store in the center of town. He went to Berkeley, he gives music lessons, he's very excited to start a show. In October,
I'm sorry, would this be a show, or would this be a one-time?
No, a monthly.
Oh, great.
Yep. I talked to Tim Murphy in October,
Again,
early November. We need to meet again and discuss an outline. He's not exactly sure where he's gonna go with it. And Linda Malcolm is considering a yoga program. I brought that up before, but I'm not sure. I'm shooting for January.
anything on the horizon with the Historical Society? I thought the,
I did videotape. It's listed in
no,
program analysis, but I did do the videotape the British Revolutionary Soldier. It was very exciting.
right on,
A
right?
lot better than I anticipated.
And his wife?
And his wife, they
Yeah.
were fantastic. People loved it. It was a packed house. It was wonderful. But I know, I met with Jim Larkin
Yeah.
to drop off DVDs, and he said there may be some things coming down the road because the Historic Society is planning some kind of, I don't know if it's in the spring or next fall. It's pretty far away. The anniversary of some revolutionary battle in Worcester.
Oh,
So that's in the works. What else? In October, I did the Safety Center open house. I did the Red Cross roll call, which was a little presentation at the library. Candlelight vigil, and last week, Keeping Time and Clockwinder. I don't know if you had a chance to see that. So, awesome. Sorry, it was so much fun going up there. And as far as what I have planned for October, I have it listed, but of course I can't remember. I'm just waiting to get some schedule on the basketball games. A couple of other things. I was at a party and I saw Rich Letarte, and he apologized for not doing a baseball show last year, so maybe we can get something into the works there. And I also met someone at that same get-together who does not live in Lunenburg anymore, moved out of Lunenburg, but he's a 20-something, maybe early 30-something, I'm not sure. And he had taken videotape of cow tipping and all kinds of other things that happened in town. So we started talking, and I thought we should do a Throwback Thursday and try to get some submissions from people, whether they attended a parade in 1991 and want to submit it. I don't know, it was just an idea.
Beyond the statute of limitations.
Yeah, right. So anyway, that was just a thought of something I'd like to continue to talk about this month. Also, I'm trying to resurrect, I started talking to Carrie Spidell and Jen Benson, and I had come across this really great YouTube from Burlington Public Access, I think. And they had a state senator, no, they had Tierney, was it the senator now, congressman, I don't know. Anyway, he did a PR for public access, and it was really, really good, so I sent the link to Jen Benson, I sent the link to everybody. And what I'd like to do, and I mentioned it to John, this was a couple months ago, but I've been too busy to do it, but just have people into the studio, members of the PAC committee, town people, whatever, just to say, we love public access and here's why. It can run on YouTube, we'll have it on the station like our regular PSA. So I'm working on getting that together too.
I think one of the issues we had discussed, it was your idea, which I thought was a good one, was having an open house at the studio.
Yeah.
And finding the time, I think originally we were thinking of doing it in September,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're almost at Christmas time, and we haven't had it. And I'm thinking if we should be looking at doing something in the spring, January,
It's
February.
Not a good winter one, I think.
Yeah.
You have to wait till it gets a little warm.
Well, one of the nicest things about open houses, John and I have been to the one in Westford and I've gone to Fitchburg Public Access, is that when you have shows, the producers come, they encourage people to watch their show, to participate, to volunteer. So I think by the spring we have La Tavola, hopefully Jake's show will take off, maybe the yoga show will be in progress. So 2 or 3 producers at that open house would really help people understand that it's a great opportunity. So the spring, late spring maybe, early
The
spring.
open house is an open house, but it's also a show.
Right,
And if Jake has started by then, doing his thing in the studio,
mhm,
to have him there, maybe performing a little bit in the background, a little musical interlude in the open house. I'm particularly anxious to see him involved, okay, because there are other folks in town that have musical ability that are either professional or semi-professional, or talented amateurs even, not to mention the high school, that if we can get a couple examples on there, and someone else can say, hey, I wouldn't mind doing that,
yeah,
you know, and I gave you one in Coretta Sellers, is someone
Right.
that has appeared at Bull Run,
right.
and she's a Lunenburg grad, and I'm sure there are other folks like that out there that if they saw Jake on TV and said, gee, that was good, I wouldn't mind doing that, you know, it may lead to something.
Yeah, he actually, every time I see him, and I saw him with Mike Barney last time we talked, and Mike was very excited that he was doing the show too. But he's so excited, I said, well, get your outline together, you know, and one of the things he wants to do is have local musicians come in. I've also sent a note, a few months ago, I have to follow up with Kate Cherborn, the harp player. Yeah, I didn't hear back from her, but I can follow up with her as well. I know she played last night, 2 nights ago at a friend of mine's healing studio thing. So I do have to get back on that. So getting back to the open house, it would be
Yeah,
good.
even some of these folks, even if they didn't want to do a show, even if all they were willing to do was come in and do 1 or 2 numbers, that could be an interlude in between 2 programs.
Right,
You know, because our shows don't go a half an hour or an hour. You know, oftentimes there could be time in between. Instead of just showing the scroll over and over,
mhm,
you know, we could show, you know, 1 musical number.
The basketball games for both the boys and the girls, you have the schedule for that, Joe?
I get the link from the school website,
Oh,
which
shit.
goes to the Wachusett, links to the Wachusett.
Oh, okay. So you know when the games are?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, Jason mentioned he checked already, because he's chomping at the bit.
All
So, he said he hadn't seen anything posted.
And are they going to start, are we gonna, I believe they've always had at least 1 game in December. Do we know when that game is? Are we gonna start with that one, or are we gonna go with January, begin programming then.
No, when they start, we'll start, but Jason mentioned a few days ago, he hadn't even seen the schedule up yet.
Oh,
Maybe it's been up in the last day or two. I have to double check.
well, it must be because some games over with Thanksgiving games. I think they got one more Super Bowl game to play. After that, it should be. Fitchburg Access TV, was it you, John? Or someone else had mentioned, there were a couple of guys that do a show at Fitchburg Access, maybe it was you, Joe, that you ran into or something, and they were interested in coming to Lunenburg. Maybe it was Scott, that they were gonna come, he spoke to them, and they were gonna get a hold of me or something. You have two guys doing a sports show up there?
Oh, Gooby, Sean Gooby.
No, it was, I don't think it was just Gooby, I think it was a couple, well, anyway, I never heard from him, so I don't know.
Okay.
So I haven't seen Scott lately, so I was wondering if those two guys are still doing a show. I don't know if it was a daily or weekly, and they were doing one at Fitchburg, at Fatby. And they were interested in coming to Lunenburg. And I don't know what happened with that scenario since we last met.
They can share the DVD with us, they don't have to come, you mean come to our studio?
Well, they were gonna do a show from Lunenburg as well.
Oh, but they're already doing one at FATV?
Yeah, but I don't know, they didn't talk to me, they didn't ask me, I don't know what their
Oh, okay,
plans were, so.
okay.
I-
Are these Pittsburgh State guys, or,
I don't think so.
because the two guys are doing the Pittsburgh High Talk show, where they have, one of the players or one of the coaches, and they've been doing
No,
that
I
talk show.
don't think, I don't know.
Brothers, or something like that.
I don't think it was just Fitchburg High, unless they wanted to come to Lunenburg and try and do a Lunenburg show, I don't know, I never got a chance to talk with them.
You can find out who they are,
Yeah,
see if they want to come to the Olympic trip, then we have announcers for the games. I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, we should split the equipment over there. Take the studio,
Well, I just,
and
you
start
know,
setting up for,
there seemed to be some interest there, and I was trying to pull them in,
yeah,
you know,
if we can get an announcement,
have
we're
them
all
set up
set
for
to go.
Joe. And,
At that point, we can bring the studio over.
the other thing I wanted to ask is, I noticed in this printout, with regards to progress report, Joe, we didn't make any, in order to do additional programming, we always need volunteers or additional staff. And in this case, you were going to meet with some Lunenburg students and they didn't show.
Right.
And you were going to try and do some training with FHS students, and there wasn't any interest.
No, I got over there and the person, Tim at FATV, does the training. And I was pulling up in front of Fitchburg High School and he called me up and said, don't bother, there's no kids here, because they're supposed to sign up. So I have to get back in touch with Tim so that I can shadow him and find out how he trains those students, and then we'll do the same here, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah, thanks for
and
following.
Mike Wallman's working out well.
Mike Wallman's working out really well. He's not gonna be here doing the selectmen meeting tomorrow, but he's consistent, he's here.
And,
Liz Cameron,
is that his girlfriend?
I can't say his
Or a
relationship
classic.
status with her.
I mean, I don't know.
Stay out of that.
You can't answer that.
I plead the fifth. Well, this is something I'd like for you to add to your agenda for when you guys meet, if you don't mind. Liz Cameron is a Fitchburg State student who's in the film
Right.
study, and is in the program with FATV, where she's learning production and directing and camera work, and she's very knowledgeable, and she also has experience on the TriCaster, which is really invaluable. And I told her, and John and I talked about it, that, the process for working with us in town hall is to do some volunteering. John can kind of feels out, like, is this working, do you like it, what have you. And she likes doing it, and I'd really like to hire her because we do need some backup. I don't mind doing backup, John does backup, but I'd like, like to hire her at the same rate as Mike and to work.
What's Mike,
And
10?
He's 10, but I'd like to expand her hours to getting over to the studio and TriCast.
Yeah.
I would like to pay her to do that and have her and Mike, play around with the system just
Rolodex.
to learn the different features and to help John out, because I know the basics of the TriCaster. I don't even know if I can say I know the basics, but I can do certain things, but if we want to ramp up production, we really need TriCaster experience, and John's great
That's
at
right.
it, but
What year is she at Fitchwood State?
she's a sophomore, I think.
So conceivably, if it works out, we could have her as a resource for a couple of years anyways.
Probably.
So, I mean, that would be good.
Yeah, she requested that I give her a review or a detail of her hours, what she's learned, and a review for her advisor, so she can get credit for,
So would this be an internship or just?
well,
just
you know
be-
what, it's not an
Contract.
official internship, although I could talk to her advisor, but, I asked her to type it up and send it to me, because I haven't been there.
This semester was a program Fitchburg Access put on with the students. It was an actual credit course that the students took. That is a semester. After that, there was no, we'd have to start it up again and see if Fitchburg wants to do it again. But in the meantime, we can hire someone.
I just have a comment. I'm leaning toward having no problem hiring people to cover the government meetings. I guess, to me, Channel 9 is meant to be, for the community. And if we continually hire people to do that community programming, where's the incentive to get the community involved? I just
The
can't
equipment,
get over that.
the equipment part of it is gotta be protected by us. The public will do the producing of it. The equipment is run by us, because it's expensive equipment, you can't have someone not knowing how to use it.
Right, but
So
I
that's-
think part of the
That's
job
a
that
long-
you do needs to be trained. I mean, we have to offer training to community members who are interested. And I just,
On equipment that is production equipment. That type of equipment is not production,
well,
it is, but it's
I
expensive
actually
production.
bumped into
I
my
can't-
neighbor
I
down
can't
the
even
street.
get people to come and learn how to use a camera, never mind a TriCaster. I can't even get people to, I shouldn't say I can't, occasionally.
I was walking my dog yesterday morning. I bumped into my neighbor who has the son who's
Mhm.
now 17.
Yeah,
And I spoke to him, and he wanted to know how to touch base with the organizations
Right.
to get his son an opportunity. He's into videotaping, and he may be interested in learning the other
great.
equipment. So, I don't know, I just feel like that's a top priority.
Until we get, I agree with you totally. Until we get volunteers, we need to take people who are committed. Like John works full-time. He's made himself available for a lot of nighttime meetings. The studio Thursday works usually, although you try to make,
We fit into our
but
schedule.
if he can't make it, and someone says, I want to do a show, or I want to come in for training on a TriCaster, like you said, people have to be trained. I may not be the right person. This young lady would be knowledgeable, familiar,
So
anything. But a person like that, I think we should consider hiring, not just for town hall, but for,
She could do some training.
she could
in
do
addition to
training, she
some
could do.
programming.
Yeah,
You know, I'm
she's
still-
someone that can train others.
Right.
Right, I agree with
That's fine,
the-
that's justifiable, but to me, the goal is not to produce programming that we pay people to produce, it's to encourage the community to come forward with their ideas.
Right, no, most of the people we hire, it's not for paying for production, it's paying for work. Shouldn't be for production.
I know it's always a difficult balance between any kind of like nonprofit, who gets paid, who doesn't get paid. I'm not saying that, you know, it's strictly nonprofit, but it's always a difficult balance on who, you know, and if you have somebody that has training skills and has the ability and knowledge that could train volunteers, that certainly is valuable. You know, I think there has to be some of both in any nonprofit environment. You know, and I think from what I'm hearing is it's not a lot of money either. When it's you know, it's partially, and I'm also hearing that there may be some volunteer hours on top of what she gets paid. I don't know how that works if she's an actual employee, but.
I'm just saying, you know, my point is just the fact that I just want the community more involved. I don't know how to get there, I mean, but.
I think better programming would get.
Well, that's, we've had that programming now, and no one's still interested, so it's difficult, it's frustrating.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. The programming that we've produced I've gotten great feedback. The only reason why I look at Facebook and YouTube and all that is to see, it's not just a purely, you know, pat on the back, it's where you're gonna spend your money. Well, I think I'll spend my time and money on a show where 300 people are watching because they love it, not the 10 people that, you know, so there has been great interest. I think that's step one. And it makes, because of the content and the programming, it makes it, I can approach people and say, in fact, most people I talk to do watch public access. And a lot of them will say, yeah, I do, I saw that show on whatever. That's the first checkbox, that's good. Then it comes the volunteering, and that takes a little more, a lot more. And as I mentioned in other meetings, the lead time. You talk to someone and say, yeah, I think I might like to volunteer, and you talk to them in September, and in May, you're here, you know, so we're always getting the word out. It's just, I think we've made one step toward.
I do think that we do need to schedule training sessions, even if no one comes. Just so that we're constantly being told, whether it's in our print ads or, you know, on the scrolling or in a public service thing, that we really are encouraging you. And here's the training, and it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday next week. You know, and if it turns out nobody comes, okay,
Yeah.
they'll see it again next month. You know, and I do think we can't give up on the lack of folks coming in for training. You know, because it isn't going to be easy, and I'm still convinced that the high school is the real key there. If you get kids young enough, so you're going to have them for a couple of years. Seniors, I don't want to say they're worthless, but they're almost worthless, because by then they're focused on other things. You know, and either they're working a lot of hours in a part-time job, you know, or they're spending all their time, you know, with senior activities. You know, that they lose, the interest is there in September, but by December they've kind of, I don't want to say shut down, because usually most of them have not shut down academically, but they're picking and choosing how they spend their time. You know, but if we can get some freshmen, you know, and train them, you know, and, you know, not necessarily in a TriCaster in day one, but those kids will pick up stuff pretty quickly anyways. I still think that's the key, but in the meantime, as far as getting the community, I think we have to offer training, even if nobody shows up. We don't have to publicize that no one came, and just announce, next month we're gonna have training again.
Yeah,
You know,
I think that's a great idea.
and if you get one person, you know, you can then say, isn't there someone else that you know that would also be interested in this? It's not a commitment, you don't have to agree
We can
to
offer
the show.
pizza though, couldn't we? Because I love pizza. I mean, kids love pizza.
I'm for pizza, but I just think we need to keep throwing it out there even if no one shows up. you know, and, because once you get one, it gets a little easier to get the second one. It's getting the first one that's done.
That's a great idea.
Joe, do you know whether or not, based on basketball games being televised several years ago by the students using that old equipment, if there's any interest of students stepping forward to do the same thing, to work with our staff?
Not that I know of. I mean, last year Martha Cheeseman and I met several times. I went to the school. She had a student, maybe interested, but she got involved in something else. And then this year, I was, you know, best friends with the senior, no, I shouldn't say that, but the senior class advisor. I haven't heard from her. I've emailed her. So, you know, I don't know. I've kept up with these things, and it's just, it's very, very difficult.
The places that are highly successful are ones that have a studio in the school
Most of them do.
and that are offering a couple courses for credit. So that the kids not only are taking the course, what?
No. Fitchburg High has a state-of-the-art studio.
They're not used.
They do not put on one basketball team.
Is that right?
That's right. And they have an advisor for it.
I just think
Very
it's,
disappointing.
it's hard if we're not there. If, you know,
It
they're
does
there
have
and we're over here,
Adults have
you know,
to-
and, you know,
I think that would.
I've seen it done, but I must admit it was
Where was
not
it?
drinking, but it was not
Yeah.
recent, but
Largest-
they
Well,
had
Groton
kids,
does it as well. Groton has a.
they had kids then that
If
could
you have in the house,
go out and
that's
get
making it
entry-level
easier.
jobs,
Yeah.
you know.
I've sent Mike, I mentioned this to you before, but I sent Mike Wallman over for training in Groton, because I have a relationship with Bob Coleman, and that's, you know, we will end up doing the same thing, and then do the same, like, on a schedule basis. I just got an email, we were interested in coming. So, you know, hopefully, once we get more training going, I would, you know, I would take any students from any surrounding towns. And I forgot my point, so I'm all set.
I think with, you know, going back to our August meeting, I had pointed out that I had an opportunity to sit down with the superintendent of schools. And at that time, I asked her, in this new school that's being proposed, if there was an area that PAC could use, or put a studio into. And it was pointed out by the superintendent of grounds, and whatever John Mond's remaining title is, that it was not being planned to put a studio in that new school, and that possibly there is some extra space, and that we could utilize part of that extra space to do some training. Beyond that, the school hasn't been approved, the money hasn't been spent, the building hasn't been put up, but there is space that's going to be in there. I think at some point, this committee should think about what plan, if it goes according to the voters, and it is decided that the school is to be built, then I think that this committee needs to make a decision in terms of approaching the school again and setting up some kind of a, not only a studio space, and I think the equipment may be an issue. I think John brought that up at one of the meetings in terms of putting a camera in there no matter what, and then trying to work out part of a curriculum possibly to get some students involved. The other issue is, and I'm digressing here because we're discussing programming, but we're discussing volunteers and paid staff are what makes our programming go. Well, the studio is also involved with programming and volunteer staff, as we all know. And that I have no idea, maybe our selectman, our guest here tonight, knows, or some, whether or not that building advisory committee has determined whether or not part or all of the elementary school is going to be torn down based on the town accepting and voting for a new school. If that's the case, then we've got to find a studio. We've got to find another building for a studio. So a lot of this is contingent as far as getting in there and working with students, more so than what we're doing now, based on the school, based on the space being made available. I always thought Fred's suggestion, he's been making it for months, and Rhonda has pointed this out as well, that in order to encapsulate volunteers, we need to be in the school system somehow to try and do it. And I know it's not working at Fitchburg High, based on what you're saying, John. But if there was, what I like about what's happening with Fitchburg Access is the relationship you guys have with Fitchburg State College, or Fitchburg State University, so that you've got a course up there where the students have to come down and spend so many hours. I don't know if that's the type of thing that we can approach the high school on, and whether it could be an accredited program, or, and I know I've talked about it before, and I know Joe has gone to discuss this with some folks at Fitchburg, I think Fitchburg State, but looking into that as well. But I think that there's a lot of options that we've got in front of us, and it's just a matter of continuing with the programming that we got, building on that programming, finding a way of trying to build on either paid staff or additional volunteers, and reeling them in somehow. And communication, I think, is a big thing too. I think that the fact that, you know, the officials know there's a game canceled, you don't. I mean, that's a big issue.
I think, oh, I'm sorry.
Just to add, if I may, Mr. Chairman, my introduction to public access television was through Suffolk University, and it wasn't an entire program of study about programming or cameras. It was actually a public relations course, but it was only one piece of it, so it wasn't like an entire dedicated course just to that. It was all, what our assignment was is that the class had to produce a program for a nonprofit, to help the nonprofit, to do public relations for the nonprofit, create a commercial, create media, create all sorts of things, printed and non-printed material. And so, personally, I think maybe if it's approached with some of the teachers or whatever, that it's only one piece of a program or part of a program, or maybe
An optional assignment.
Right,
In lieu of,
extra credit maybe.
in lieu of a term paper, you
Right.
can do, you know, develop a public service announcement for something.
And I think that it also gives the student a great deal of satisfaction to see something they produced on television and something they produced on film, and especially in the whole classroom where they're, you know.
Morning announcements.
Well,
Morning announcements.
That's what we're trying to get
Kids love to
students
do that.
in for when they
If you haven't been able to
able
see that,
do their.
Even the elementary, morning announcement for the elementary school, morning announcement for the high school, the agenda for the week, what we're having for lunch.
That's what we do.
Two students do that, and you help to make students, and they get extra credit for the class if you keep up with it.
I will say that ours was not an extra credit, it was required, so there was a lot of incentive for students.
Well, no, however it needs to be applied and then further developed, needs to be done. And I know we've talked about it as a committee for several months, and it's just out there to be brought forward, I think. And once some of these things in town start to develop, then we can probably start to pursue it. But until that is done, it's difficult for us to pursue it.
We could always come over to the studio.
Uh,
We could always come over to the studio and
yeah, I know
do it
that.
in days in advance, something like that, or hold receiving.
Yeah, we traveled to the studio and did projects. We did it in the studio. We ran the TriCaster, we were trained and all that.
Yeah, and that's what I really think, having the training scheduled, I think just cameras isn't gonna do it. I think TriCaster, because the TriCaster is the sexiest part of the whole studio. I mean, cameras look nice and they're fun, but the TriCaster is like, whoa, you know, so, and also it would be good to promote it through social media too, because kids aren't gonna go on TV and look at it. They're gonna- Anyway, and also just FYI, we have a Cub Scout
I saw that.
group coming through on the 18th, so that should be fun,
Did you
Coming
have any,
to the studio?
yeah.
Kids love it, they love it.
I did it with the Girl Scouts at Town Hall, and they were like, I was more excited than them.
did you have any luck, you had mentioned trying to get a student news show, you know, doing the news, students doing news?
Yeah, no, that's the two students are supposed to come and see me, I
That's
can
what-
reconnect and find out.
Never
but
showed
yeah,
up?
No. And then I emailed the advisor, like, did I make a mistake, or did they make a mistake? And it was right around float homecoming,
Oh,
so she probably
they're
was
up
like,
straight.
yeah, so I'll follow that up again.
Okay, well, I just thought it, some of the things I remembered. And any further discussion on our program calendar, our programming, our thoughts process here? Okay, if not, let's jump into job description, evaluation instrument, and process for PAC administrative coordinator position. In the August meeting, Fred had handed to everyone a copy of the proposed gizmo. And we were to take a look at it, put some thought process behind it, and come back for further discussion. And I'm wondering where we are on that, since we haven't met. I know, Fred, you mentioned, would you like to talk about this a little bit, because Troy was not at that last meeting?
Sure. It's modeled, it reflects, since I brought it forth, it certainly does reflect sort of my general attitude about evaluation. But it also is modeled after the Council on Aging process. That what we attempted to do, I happen to be on that committee also, and what we attempted to do was make sure that the evaluation instrument was tied directly to the job description. And so that's all I did, was to go through our job description. And most of these are literally word for word from that. They're just grouped a little differently. So that for the purpose of the evaluation, they tend to either be under the heading of fiscal planning and management, but it's maintaining fiscal records, and inventory of equipment, all the things that are in the job description. Communication, again, there are things that they're not new. And then programming, increase the quantity while improving the quality of programming through the following, and those were all things that we had talked about, or they were on the list originally. And then, based on that, to just have a very simple form, in which people could take in each of those three categories. They wouldn't necessarily have to comment on every item, but fiscal planning and management give a rating of 1 through 5, and then give some comments as to why that was. And then for communication, and then also programming, and then an overall. And what we had talked about at that, we're talking in August, I think, was a general process in which presumably the individual, which happens to be Joe, since we don't have thousands of employees that, you know, so it's hard to hide who we're talking about here. But Joe would do a self-evaluation, and we would put down our best guess as to how she's doing in each of those areas. I think, for me personally, then the key is really the discussion that follows. It's not just keeping score, it's having a dialogue, and this would allow an opportunity for that. I don't know. But, I mean, they've been out of the picture, but anyway, pass it on to Carrie. And I think, you know, the process, you could do it in a variety of ways, but the key, I think, is that it should be done consistently, frequently. You know, I'm inclined to think on a yearly basis, you know, maybe it could be every other year, but if it's not done for 3 or 4 years, then suddenly it's done, it's gonna look like either somebody's out to get somebody or somebody's out to reward somebody, and it's, you know, I just think it needs to be consistent, whatever it is. I think the instrument could be tweaked from one year to the next, you know, as we realize, gee, there's certain parts of your job that may be expanding, other parts that are not as necessary anymore. So I can see the job description changing a little bit over, say, a 5-year period. And so that would affect the, you know, the instrument. But I think the key really is the process, is to have something that's tied to the actual job description that allows, that requires some documentation that people explain why they're rated the way they are, and also has a self-evaluation component, and then creates a dialogue. And the timing is also sort of key. You don't want to do it in the fall, because then you could have new PAC members who would have no idea. They wouldn't know how to fill out the form, just they haven't seen you long enough. And so it would seem to me this is something that normally would occur in the springtime. You know, that the forms are passed out, you know, maybe in February or the beginning of March, and, you know, collected, collated, and there's a discussion then, so that by May or the beginning of June they could be passed on. And I think, that, again, the key is just consistency. You know, I mean, my observation in terms of evaluation in the high school is that when they were done that way, they were useful. When they weren't, when they were done here and there, it was not so useful. You know, but so anyway, that's what we had discussed. And at the time, we didn't take a vote, partly because this was the first time we had discussed it. It had come up, the idea that we wanted to do something, but it's the first real discussion of it. So we didn't want to take a vote, but I think at the time there was sort of a general consensus in terms of that direction.
My understanding was is that there is also a job or a job description being looked at or checked or discussed, or it was suggested to me, I think, by the town manager that she had given me multiple copies of job descriptions and wanted me to look at those, thinking that it was being discussed by this committee at one point. As someone who has significant experience in human resources.
What you do?
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
I worked in the HR department for a 5,000 employee company, and then I worked for the parent company at Monster.com, and I did evaluations, hiring, recruiting, and all that. And also with my legal background, I would certainly concur that they need to be done on an annual basis, not less than. And I agree with all your comments about being problematic whenever you don't, problematic when they're inconsistent, problematic whenever you don't have open communication, ongoing communication. All those things are very accurate. So the only other thing, you know, I've seen lots of different ways to do that. I'd be happy to share some of those with you if you want me to, or if you like this. Then, you know.
The only question I have is, in terms of timing, if we're going to do it this year, so it would have to be done by June, let's say at the latest, at the beginning of June.
When was the last evaluation done?
I was hired in November 10th, 2010, and I've never had one.
Okay.
This will be the first.
So, timing-wise, I think you really need to start something by March.
At the latest.
Yeah, I would think so. And
Do we know how consistent this is with how other town employees are evaluated? Do we know if there's any,
Well, they don't have a system,
they don't,
no.
We had, yeah, we had.
they don't,
Lance
they
had
don't
asked-
evaluate any of the employees of the town?
oh, no, I think people are evaluated, but I don't know if Bob wants to speak to it.
The town manager is evaluated. And the town manager evaluates the department heads. There are not consistent instruments for all town employees. So I would say that this is not inconsistent because there is not a lot of other ones that would be out there. Any instrument is better than none. The way the selectmen do it, each of the 5 selectmen fill the form out. It goes to the chairman who collates everything so all the information is together and you get down to one document with all the different comments, the different scores are averaged and various things like that. So you get the detailed information and you get an average information too. So it sounds like you're on the right track for that.
Is there a self-evaluation typically in those?
I don't know that. I've not heard of that. And I don't know if I'm not sure if the town manager does it or not. I can't remember. Okay, I wasn't involved
See,
in
the
the last
council on
one.
aging is maybe
I think it's a great idea to do a self-evaluation.
maybe a little different in that they have a board, such as we do, you know, and so the board did the evaluation and then passed that forward, and then obviously Carrie has her own. I don't mind looking at other options. The problem is how do we do it and get it done? I would
Well, we
be
have,
reluctant to have it go beyond June. Because if it goes beyond June, I think you're really looking at
another year.
another year, the following spring. I have made it very public for some time that when my term is up, I will be done. And so, you know, there's at least one new member, and hopefully we're gonna have another new member, you know, so, you know, when you're talking about new people, you're not gonna do an evaluation in the fall. It really has to wait toward the end of the year. So it's a question of whether or not we can get started on something by March. I suppose theoretically you could do it in April, but then
Budgets.
you're doing budgets and getting ready for town meeting and so on, so, my preference would be that we'd be able to start in March, which means we'd have to have everything in place by February, and other than December 9th, we're really talking about one meeting, probably. So, it's my only concern.
I mean, I think there might be simpler ways to do it, but there's certainly a start at evaluation, and that's what's the most important, the bottom line. And we want to be able to evaluate. So, I don't, you know, maybe we improve it moving forward if we can, or we think we need to. Or we see how well it works, and if it's too much work for the committee members, then that's also a consideration.
So that we want to, I know that the 3 of us have, when Fred passed this out, looked at it in our August meeting and determined that, you know, it looked sound and to go with it. Is this something you would like to review and then come back in February and say, okay, since you were not part of that discussion in August?
Well, just looking at it on the face of it, I don't see any glaring problems with it. So, I mean, if you'd like me to do that, I'm certainly happy to do that. It's really up to the committee what the preference is.
Well, I mean, since it's already been used at the Council on Aging with success, and it appears to be something that Fred had gone over and made available for us to use, inserting PAC in there where it needed to be inserted to bring it up to our speed. I had hoped that we could decide tonight to use this, and then, I guess, begin the process in February. How does the committee feel on that? Would you like to entertain a motion to accept this to be used towards the evaluation?
I move that we accept the instrument Fred presented to perform the job evaluation.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of using this as the evaluation form, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And would each member want to go over this themselves? And Bob had a good suggestion, I thought, in terms of going over it and coming back to crush our thought process on this for discussion in February? Is that what you?
What, you're talking about actually doing the evaluation?
Well,
For the
just,
February meeting?
well, I guess, yeah, I mean, to get it started.
Well, I would think,
Or you want to wait till April?
if the goal is to collect the data, you could do that in March. I think we could talk about it in February, just so everybody's clear on what they're doing. When we revised the instrument at the Council on Aging, we made sure we went over things so that when people were reacting, they were reacting to the same thing. They understood everything the same way. So I think it might be useful maybe in February to just
Okay.
look at the instrument and make sure we're all sort of on the same page on
And then begin the process in March.
it. In March,
Okay, I don't think that needs a vote, I mean, it just needs a yes.
Just needs to be on the agenda.
Uh-huh.
Just needs to be on the agenda.
Yeah, right, well, we'll take it. Provided we're not going against the open meeting law. Okay, thank you everyone for that. And that takes care of old business unless someone else has some old business. If not, under the new business, we just decided a few articles ago, to meet December 9th, at 7 p.m. to go over the budget items that we had discussed earlier. And also, I believe there was another issue that just came about, to meet on December 9th to talk about the hiring the student on a part-time basis.
Yeah.
So those would be the only two agenda items for that meeting.
In the normal process of hiring, have you requested interviews, or have you requested resumes or anything of that nature, or how does it?
Well, in this particular case, it's a part-time student who was at that selectmen's meeting and has worked with John, and has worked with Joe, and works with Mike, and someone who's going to Fitchburg State, being not a full-time student.
It's very little bit. Jason Kearns, who was mentioned,
We have not.
was one of the candidates for Joe's job. And he was someone that we were impressed with at the time. We didn't think he had the administrative kind of background, but we knew he had skills.
So is this more of a budgetary consideration then? Is that
Well, it's a matter of
authorization to hire and pay this?
Yeah.
bring her on board to begin doing some of the part-time work that someone else may not be available to do.
Yeah.
Give her some flexibility,
Yeah.
or John some flexibility to.
Yeah, no,
It-
I
it's
just didn't know how the process.
It needs, what we're gonna need is a vote that's gonna indicate at what level she's gonna be paid, and,
Number of-
roughly the number of hours.
So, I mean, if there's no problem with that, those will be the only two agenda items for the,
I guess my only concern with it is how would she be classified as an employee or as a vendor? And there's some legal limitations on that, and maybe I would ask that, I don't know if Joe, you want to talk to the town manager about that? Because there's certain restrictions on what you can do with a vendor. If you have somebody that you designate certain hours with and all that, and paying by the hour, it becomes very problematic from a legal perspective. as an employee versus vendor.
So then the motion to bring her on board would be a motion to bring on board a vendor.
Well, but you can't call somebody a vendor that's really an employee. And so we need to make the distinction,
We could describe the duties.
well,
We're hiring her to
that's
provide
problematic.
training on TriCaster.
No, but you can't call somebody a vendor and then actually not be a vendor. I mean, if they walk like a duck, act like a duck, they are a duck. And so if they walk like an employee, talk like an employee, and work like an employee, they are an employee under the law. So then it becomes a whole different, the liabilities of the town and all that kind of stuff is a whole different issue. Yeah, absolutely.
John is technically a vendor, and he works at town hall and also at the studio.
Yeah.
Mike Wallman has been with us 5 years, he's a vendor, works with,
No, I know
so I
about
guess what I'm
those.
saying is we have,
It's slotted in the budget as well.
I know.
Okay,
I'm saying it's a problem depending on the way we describe it and the way we define it and what we tell her she can and can't do and when she can and can't do it.
okay,
So that's what I want to clarify.
okay.
So you can't, I know about the other people, I know that they're paid as vendors, but you need to make sure that they're treated like vendors.
So the thing is that it has to be defined. And as a reason of defining it, am I or Joe going to go and check with town manager on, I mean, since we already,
Whomever, whomever, or maybe we may even need to get clarification
she's
from
going
town
straight
council.
out, so. All right, well, you're gonna let me know, Joe, so we can put it on the agenda
I mean,
on how to.
maybe just to educate on how we should treat a vendor, how we can continue to make sure they're legally classified as a vendor.
Okay. I know that in recent news or past year or so, there's been concerns about interns and payment and that whole pretty cloudy mess. I didn't know vendors actually fell into that. It's not the same thing, but, clarification of the rules,
Well, I had an issue with, in the past, there was some indication that there was like a dress code and things like that in some of the minutes, and I raised the question with Carrie about that. And if you're a vendor, you treat vendors differently than you treat employees, and you have to continue to treat them differently than employees. Or they become an employee whether you call them that or not. So that's,
okay, I'll try to.
Yeah.
All right.
we can get clarification. I mean, I'm not saying we can't hire a vendor, I'm not saying we can't hire an employee, it's just, we need to make sure that when we describe a job description, or we give a job description, we want to be careful what we put in that.
All right, so she's a student and she's part-time. Beyond that, how do you classify? You're talking about payroll. Pay purposes?
Vendors don't get paid.
I'm taking it as pay purposes.
There are a lot of issues, and it's not one simple answer. I would just recommend that we, do you have anything to add?
The other thing is the IRS does have a guideline of whether somebody's a vendor or an employee. A lot of it has to do whether they are being supervised by somebody. If you tell them everything they have to do, when they have to be there, and everything else like that, they're turning into an employee, as opposed to if they exercise independent discretion, then they become a vendor. Well, the vendor who comes in and paints this place as a painter is independent. John Londa's crew, who comes in and paints, they're employees. So what is it that's different? And you can create your people as vendors, but you just have to be careful in all your language. You don't talk about personnel, so it's very language specific, but it's also what is reality. If the person falls down, are they going to be able to collect workers' compensation? If you terminate the vendor agreement, are they going to go get unemployment? The answer is no if they're vendors. The answer is yes if they're employees. So you want to be very careful and describe what they're actually doing. And Carrie can give you that information. She knows that. She knows that off the top of her head. So
It's more than just a description too, it's also the way you treat them.
Right.
So you can describe it one way, but then if you treat them as an employee, then they become an employee. So that's,
So the vendor is treated as a subcontractor, is that what
That's
you're
correct.
saying? And in the past, I think we tried to quote unquote, use it as a subcontractor, so as to avoid paying any additional fees or damages.
But Carrie will be able to help Joe
yeah.
describe it.
Well, she has to okay it anyway. Thank you, John. Okay, any further discussion to come for us this evening, any further public comments? See, Fred?
Well, no. It's not a public comment, it's a semi-public comment. It's just that I will meet with Sue Doherty soon, and I will work on those. But it's a busy time, so I'm not guaranteeing that I'll have those minutes for December 9th. I'll try, but if I don't have them, you've been warned.
All right. Any further business to come before us tonight? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, before you enter, just a suggestion that you have a scheduled meeting in February, that you may want to try to schedule that now.
Well, good point. I don't have February calendar, that's the problem.
Oh,
That's great.
geez.
I'm not that thorough,
But it's
Dan.
not my real schedule.
And you could do that next Monday at
Yeah,
your
can we do
meeting.
it on Monday, so I can
Yeah, let's do it
consult my
Monday.
schedule?
That's still a good
I
point.
wouldn't believe that this is problematic for bathrooms. Did you
I
find
need
one?
to use the
There's a bathroom around the corner,
Where?
all the way down the back to the left.
Good thing to know, I didn't know.
Okay, all in favor of adjournment, please signify.
We don't have a form.
She said yes.
If I could just take a quick moment and thank you for your patience tonight. Effectively, you had a open meeting law training, and I will convey this to Carrie so that when she was going to try to schedule some additional, that you don't need to go to the full one. I would suggest that there be some additional review of the town councils. He came and talked to the selectmen, and we got into this nitty gritty. We actually found out we were not doing it, the executive sessions correctly. But it is a new world, it is different, so I appreciate your patience tonight and the work that you did to get through that. I
Where do
think-
you get my bill?
That's right. Well, check's in the mail.
Yeah. Don't hold my breath, right? Is that when you want to post that? Are you gonna post that Wednesday? They're not on Friday.
They're not there Friday.
Actually, I think that, because there's a couple of YouTube,
Thursdays.
YouTube things that the Attorney General does. that-
Yep.
Right. Some of those.
Well, I have to drop off the other
town council.
So I'll try and,
So the thing is,
I know, I personally don't see that not having the minutes is going to prevent us from discussing.
Sure.
So I
Oh, I don't
think
think
it's problematic.
I was just
Yeah.
warning people that they may or may not be ready.
Okay.
and you're talking about these October 15th minutes?
Yes.
All right. And then I would assume that for that agenda for the 9th, this is how it has to be displayed, right?
Right.
All right. Try to come up with less paperwork, I go home and home.
Oh, I know. We killed a lot of trees tonight.
That's a bit.
You should look like, you know, the colonial ladies coming out saying, I do declare.
They talk that way.
Okay,
Sorry.
are you all set? All right, now we can vote to adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Entertain a
guys.
motion to
I
adjourn.
couldn't read
Oh, no,
what
you're
you
gonna do
were
that
saying.
for a meeting, you're gonna set it next week.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Just don't chuck it.